specialises in security. Anthony, thank you very much indeed for being with us. I want to start with the situation overnight with these US strikes on targets in Syria. What is that all about?
Well, what that is all about, in essence, is trying to prevent this ongoing conflict from turning into a wider war in the Middle East. And a wider war in the Middle East could, given the war that Russia is waging in Ukraine, a wider war altogether. So it's an extremely serious situation, and the peace of the world is really hanging by a thread. The purpose of these American attacks on Hezbollah Syrian facilities is to try to ensure that Hezbollah, which is Iran's revolutionary army in Syria, does not attack Israel from the north whilst Israel prepares itself to invade North Gaza, because Israel is in no position to fight a war on two fronts by itself. Some people, myself included, think that Israel is not really in a position to fight that war right now in any case, because of the terrible trauma that was caused on the 7th of October. It's a very bad situation.
And yet Netanyahu is adamant. He said Israel is getting prepared for a ground invasion. We know 300,000 troops amassing on the border. It really is a question of time only. Netanyahu is also, I suppose, being urged to exercise caution by many states, including the United States. The United States also trying to set up air defences to protect its troops, its assets. In terms of this ground invasion, I wonder whether you think it is likely, and if you do, when is it coming?
Well, I do think it's likely. I'm not sure it is a good idea at this stage. Let there be no mistake. I don't think there can be any question but that the Israelis have to go after the Hamas jihadists and they have to wipe them out. I don't think there can be any doubt about that. We would take the same attitude in our country if we knew there was a terrorist running around, an Islamist terrorist running around the streets of London. We would be glad if they were neutralized, killed before they could carry out any attack. But I think the Israelis need to be very careful in following Netanyahu right now. We've all seen him on the television, black shirt. I'm not quite sure why he's wearing that. He is clearly looks very, very anxious, upset. And in a way, it's not surprising. He's been the prime minister who has not delivered on security. Delivering on security is the basic duty of any head of government, and particularly so in Israel. The largest loss of life in probably, in proportional terms, the largest terrorist attack ever. 9/11, more people were killed, but America is a much larger country. He is, I'm sure, racked by guilt and above all driven by revenge. Now, that is not a good way for Israel to deal with this issue of getting those Hamas jihadists and eliminating them. What people want is justice, I think, not revenge. But I suspect there will be an occupation. And don't let's forget the 200 or so hostages still in Israel. If Israel does invade Hamas, Gaza, those 200 hostages will probably be killed.
You talked about the threat and the fears of this spreading beyond the borders of Israel and Gaza and a wider war in the Middle East, Anthony. Yesterday, we had the Russian President Vladimir Putin welcoming both Hamas and Iran to Moscow. How significant and concerning is that?
Well, Putin, of course, is a mass killer and has huge aggressive intentions in Europe. And he can see a way of furthering his aims by linking up with Iran and with Hamas. We've also seen pictures of the chief Ayatollah of Iran greeting the head of Hamas and the head of Hezbollah, which is an Iranian proxy. All the time, they are trying to indicate that if Israel goes after these killers, then a more general war in the Middle East, at any rate, to begin with, will break out, but one that could even help Russia to prosper in Ukraine. Hence the American attacks on Hezbollah. They're showing that they're in the game, and that is extremely important. As for a ceasefire, of course, that, you can call for a ceasefire, you can call for the fighting to stop. From the Israeli point of view, that is one-sided. That is not allowing Israel to get justice, but it is allowing Hamas to get off scot-free. So I think a ceasefire, I think that's the wrong word entirely. Of course, as many of the innocent Palestinian civilians as possible should be enabled to get out of the area where there is fighting. But I think that the air attacks will continue, because you can't send ground troops into a highly urbanized area. It's terrible fighting. Thousands will be killed. Now, I noticed the Israeli ambassador to the UK has pointed out, quite correctly, I'm afraid, that the RAF killed many innocent Germans, the USAF killed many innocent Germans in the fight to get rid of Nazism in Western Germany during the Second World War.
Professor.
A war is a terrible thing. However, once you start, I'm afraid you have to win.
Professor.
And Israel has got to get hold of those terrorists, and then you can think about the future.
Professor.